Hi everyone. So the topic of online bullying is in the news a lot lately here in Queensland and Australia generally. There's a move by the government to ban social media accounts for people under 16 years of age, and I think that's a great idea. And sadly there's been suicides, children suiciding because of online bullying that they've had. So I just thought I'd share a couple of my own experiences about how I deal with it, because I'm fairly vocal in the environment space and conservation and land clearing in an area that's fairly pro land clearing. I cop a bit online, and I'm not suggesting for a moment it's on a par with what some of these poor kids have suffered, but nonetheless, it's been something that I've had to work out how to deal with. And so this is just what I do to deal with it. And if that's of use for you, great. If it's not, then don't worry. Look for probably better sources than me or more professional sources. But I just want to share how I've managed to deal with it. So the first thing I do, whenever I get any bit of criticism online, is I analyse it and I try and work out, is there any value? Is there any kind of worthwhile thing, even if it's being said in a not very nice way? Is there anything of value or worth that I can learn from it? And I mean, the actual content of what they're saying, not what I might be learning about them, but the actual criticism. Is there any kind of value in it? Now, I think if anyone gives criticism, it should always be constructive and in a respectful way, because none of us are perfect and we can all learn various things from each other. So it's when it's not given in a constructive way that it kind of gets a bit difficult, because your emotions get involved then and it can be harder to sort out the value from just your emotional reaction. But regardless of the tone that it's delivered in, the first thing I do is try and analyse it and just see what is in there of value. And if I can find something of value, I take it on board. I may respond to the person, about that particular topic. But I think it's always important whenever you engage with people to do it in a respectful way and a polite and constructive way. And I like to cut to the chase as well. A lot of times people just waffle on. You make something more meaningful by just getting straight to what the point and the subject matter is. And so, if someone criticizes me, if there's something of value in there, then I'll take it on board or respond to them. And you very quickly work out, I guess, what the overriding outlook in them is, and if they want to keep responding, or if it's just deteriorating and they're just kind of, they may have said something of worth in passing, but really they just want to have a go at you. And so I very quickly then work out whether or not it's worthwhile pursuing this. I've got to say, in all of the interactions I've had online, probably less than 1%, there's been a time when I've gone, oh, wow, you're right, and thanks for that, blah, blah, blah. Or the other person has said, oh, wow, you're right, thanks for that. And we've reached some kind of, positive ending where one or both of us has learned something. Look, a bit of a sidetrack, but I think it has to do with how we treat people when we're not actually seeing them. If we were disagreeing with someone in person, we might very quickly agree to disagree. But when it's taken away from the personal interaction and it's just the words, and for some reason words seem to have so much more impact. And someone once told me they thought it was because when you read it, it's your voice saying it in your head, and that actually is really interesting. That could be part of it. But there's just something about how words are disattached from the person when they're delivering it that seems to give them added weight. And, they can also come down over time. 10, 20 things that were said 10 or 20 years ago, that you'd forget about if it was just what someone said to you, or, you'd have long since forgiven them, because if you have that relationship with a person, you see they've changed over the years. But things that are written down seem to be as if they're fresh and new, and they're coming right at you. So anyway, so I try and see if there's anything of value in there. If I'm interacting with the person, polite, respectful, straight to the point, but be very quick to work out whether or not there's any point in pursuing this. And if there's not, if they're not open-minded about it or wanting to have a respectful conversation, then, there's no point pursuing it. So, and I guess, they've got to be open-minded and have a respectful conversation. You can't really have one without the other, because then again, there's no point. So then I just disengage as quick as possible, but you can still be left with a really grating feeling, and things can really get into you. And, I guess probably, I wouldn't say the only time one really got under my skin, but the one that got under my skin a lot a few years ago was we were having a big battle in this town about opening up a big bushland reserve for mountain biking, which would have wrecked the place, and it didn't happen. But there was a lot of argy-bargy online about that, and various people, not representative of all mountain bikers by any stretch of the imagination, but a few of them were a bit aggressive. And one of them said to me, "You're what's wrong with the country." And I got to admit, that got under my skin for a while, but then I learned how to deal with it. And so, even if you stop engaging online, the question is, how do you deal with it afterwards? And look, I had two experiences that kind of showed me how to deal with it. And the first one, this is going to sound a bit tangential, but this is kind of the context that helped me to get to this point, was I worked for Services Australia in Centrelink for a couple of years, and I was a compliance officer. So my job was raising debts against members of the public. And it's not like, we weren't like a debt collection agency. We weren't stand over people. There were a lot of dispensations we could give people. But nonetheless, you're still ringing people up and telling them that, they have a debt to the government, and that's quite a hard job to do. And I found, probably just over once a week, I would get someone who was a domestic violence victim, and giving those people this kind of news was very difficult. And most of the time it was women. Once it was a man, and I felt just as sorry for him because he was in just as bad a position. But, in those instances, you try and do everything you can for them, and you are actually helping them by laying out exactly what the situation is, what their rights are, how they can go about it, if they want to appeal it. You're informing them, giving them everything they need to know. So most of the time, the people would be in a better position after the phone call than beforehand. In fact, always, as long as they were going to kind of listen and engage and not just fly off the handle. And I just mean all the customers, not the domestic violence ones. But with those domestic violence victims, it was so hard, because I just wished at the end of the phone call I could just snap my fingers and all of the problems would have gone away. But even though you may improve things in just that one interaction you have with them, you don't solve their problems. And I was talking to one of my managers about this, and she said, "But you shouldn't really be doing that anyway." And I thought about that, and some of these people I'd be talking to on the phone would have series of these instances going on, and it'd just be cyclical. And between that and what my manager said, I just thought, well, there's something missing. There's something they have to learn to get out of this cycle. You can't, if you did it all for them, they wouldn't be learning. So there's some point that they've got to take responsibility and learn what they're doing to avoid being in this kind of situation. So it's, you can't do it all for them. And so that was, I'm getting to the answer here, right, of what I'm trying to say. That was one part, one kind of learning of, what gave me my answer, even though that was all for something else. And the other part was, I ran in the local government elections here earlier this year. And I didn't get into our council, but I did fairly well, but I didn't get in. But I was naive at the start of that campaign. I thought, if I'm genuine and honest and listen to people and engage with them in a good open spirit to see what they're concerned about with our council and how I might be able to help them. I thought if I was to just be genuine and open to people, that would be reciprocated. And how naive am I, right? Or was I? So what I found was, if you open your door up, some people will respond in kind and be genuine and respectful. But other people, you're just opening your door up to all of the crazies. I don't want to put my, get stuck into it, but all of the unbalanced people who aren't, well, let's just say that they're not being decent, or I hate that phrase, being their best self or whatever. But anyway, you're opening yourself up to all of the problems that their inability to deal with their problems, then you're opening yourself up to all of that. I'm trying to avoid the word nutcases, but you know what I mean? You're opening your door up to all of that kind of negative stuff because these people can't deal with their issues. And they're going to mistreat you in the way, and, abuse you and threaten you. And I got all of that. Even though I was trying to just be open and just kind of see what I could do for people. And so anyway, long story short, between those two examples, what it kind of distilled in for me is that some people just aren't ready yet to look at where they are and what they're doing and how they treat people and how they treat themselves, of course, as well. But, and that's how I approach the bullying stuff online. So if I find that there's something of value in what they said, then even if they didn't say it nicely, I'll still just try and strip that away, get the value thing, learn and grow myself. If it continues in a bad way, I just disengage, wrap up the conversation, that's it. If I have bad lingering feelings, I just have to accept, well, this is where they are at this stage in their life, and I'm not responsible for that. I can't solve that for them. But, just by being a good person and leading my life in the best way that I can. Sorry, I think my battery's dying. Yeah, in leading my life in the best way I can, maybe there's going to be some kind of example, or, the ripples will go out and other people will do the same, and it will create a good kind of positive environment for these people in the world. But ultimately, people are going to be horrible to you, and you've just got to accept it's not about you personally. It's actually a reflection on them and where they're at, and their inability to deal with their life, things that have happened to them and what's going on in their life and that kind of thing. And it's actually quite sad that this is how some people are, but you've just got to be able to accept it as that. Don't take it on board as a reflection on yourself, and just let it go. And that's how I've learned how to do that. So I hope this is of some use to you. And if you're experiencing online bullying, then you shouldn't be, but it's about, and I'm sorry that you are, but it's about how you deal with it to overcome it, because you're not going to stop them from doing it. It's just about all the things that I outlined. So try and find the value in it, learn from that. If nothing's going to be positive in the exchange, disengage from it. If you're still worried about it, just understand this is about them, their inability to deal with what's happened in their life, and just the fact that they're not ready to take those steps yet. It's not about you at all. So I hope that helps. Okay, thanks.